Did Jesus actually exist? Is his existence a matter of faith? Did his miracles actually happen? Did he actually rise from the dead? Hi, I'm Father Rick Morley. I'm the rector of St. David's Radnor in Wayne, Pennsylvania. And in this series, we're going to look at who Jesus was and who Jesus is. So did Jesus actually exist? Yes, this is a matter of historical fact. The vast scholarly and historic consensus is that the Jesus of Nazareth, who we find in the scriptures, walked the earth in the early first century Roman Palestine. We see Paul starting to write about Jesus around 20 years after his life. We see the Gospels start being written around 40 years after his life. But by the time these were being written, there was already a significant movement of Jesus followers. And it's not just Christians who were trying to grow the church who wrote about Jesus. The first century Roman historian Tacitus talked about Jesus, who had been put to death at the, quote, hands of Pontius Pilate. The great first century Jewish historian Josephus talks about Jesus in two of his writings. The Roman governor Pliny the Younger talked about some of the early beliefs of the Jesus movement. These are not people who were sympathetic to early Christianity and were not writing to help build up this new Christian faith. The fact that they speak of Jesus tells us that Jesus lived. Jesus' existence is not a matter of faith. It is a matter of fact, of history. Now, the miracles that are recorded in the New Testament, did they happen? Did Jesus walk on water? Did he change water into wine? Did he heal the sick? So those are matters of faith. We have no proof. The evidence for them comes from the New Testament, the writers of the Gospels. When they wrote, it seems clear that they believed that the miracles happened and pointed to who Jesus was. But there are no secondary sources to back up the miracles. Christians have largely believed in Jesus's miracles for the last 2,000 years as a matter of faith. However, there are people who speak of there being evidence for Jesus's resurrection. N.T. Wright, the great scholar and former Anglican Bishop of Durham, has several things that he cites as evidence. He says, while there were first century Jews who spoke of resurrection, they spoke of it as an event that would eventually happen for all people at the end of time. Some first century Jews were looking for a Messiah to save them from Roman rule, but no one was expecting a Messiah to die and resurrect. So if people weren't looking for it, if it wasn't identified as a hallmark of a Messiah, then why would they make up a story of Jesus rising from the dead? In the Gospels, we see Jesus speaking of his eventual death and resurrection, but when he did, no one believed him. Not one of the disciples went to the tomb on Easter morning hoping that what Jesus had said had come true, because they just assumed that when he was killed, he was going to stay dead. There was obviously an empty tomb. If it wasn't empty, the easiest thing for the Roman authorities to do in the wake of the beginning of the Christian movement would be to produce a body. There is not one single ancient source that talks about anyone finding Jesus's body, or even about a conspiracy of people trying to hide the body. The tomb was empty. Jesus was laid in the tomb, and that was the last time anyone saw Jesus's body dead. It's reported that there were multiple resurrection appearances to dozens and dozens of people. Some of these people would have lived for decades. All anyone would have had to do is say, just kidding, we made it all up. Instead, they did the opposite. A lot of them were killed for their proclamation of the resurrection. They went to their graves saying that the grave was empty. The disciples were initially demoralized and scared for their lives, hiding in an upper room. Then, a few weeks later, they are giants of faith who are risking their lives for the news that Jesus rose from the dead. They are utterly transformed by something that must have been pretty big. The resurrection of Jesus wasn't just one little part of the earliest Christian movement. It was the linchpin. No one said that Jesus was great just because of the great things he taught. No, they said Jesus was great because he rose from the dead. If Jesus had not risen, or if there was credible evidence that he didn't, the Christian movement would probably not have formed as it did. Take all of that and put it together. No one was expecting a resurrection. The tomb was empty. No one ever found a body. Many people reported seeing the risen Christ. People risked their lives for the claim. Lives were utterly changed. And it was the bedrock of the earliest Christian faith. Take all those things together. And what's the best explanation? The resurrection is a matter of faith. There isn't proof. There never will be. The evidence is pretty good. Good enough for me, and good enough for the billions of Christians who have lived for the past 2,000 years. We can't prove that Jesus changed water into wine. We can't prove that Jesus walked on water. We can't prove that he resurrected from the dead. But when we see the explosion of faith in the first century and people risking their lives for this faith, something must have happened. Something that stirred remarkable faith in people back then and in people today. Do you believe in Jesus' resurrection? What do you make of the evidence that I presented? Does your faith require evidence?